Welcome to the Holyoke School Committee meeting on Tuesday, April 23rd. It is 6:03 p.m. I will start the meeting with roll call. I am here, and my name is Erin Brunell. Miss LaFave?
Present.
Mr. Romero? Miss Tensley Williams?
Here.
Dr. Rivera Colon?
Here.
Dr. Caballero Roca?
Present.
Mr. Willihan?
Here.
Mr. Collimore?
Here.
Miss Wilson?
Present.
And our wonderful student rep from the Dean campus, Evan Kennedy, is here with us as well. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Erin, I'm here too.
Who's there? Mayor Garcia. I'm so sorry. The screen does not tell me you're there. Oh, I see it now. Hey, welcome, Mayor Garcia. Thank you for joining us. Sorry about that. Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, republic for which is one nation, under God, indivisible, justice for all.
All right. So, real quick, bear with me while I do some housekeeping notes. On March 29, 2023, Governor Healy signed into law an act relative to extending certain state of emergency accommodations, which, among other things, extends the expiration of the provisions pertaining to the open meeting law to March 31st, 2025. Specifically, this extension allows public bodies to continue holding meetings remotely without a quorum of the public body physically present at a meeting location, and to provide adequate alternative access to remote meetings. This act does not make any new changes to the open meeting law other than extending the expiration date of the temporary provisions. Also, a notice is hereby given that this meeting is being audio and visual recorded and broadcasted out through our media. All right. Welcome, everybody. To begin the meeting tonight, we will start with public comment, but I don't have anybody signed up. I confirmed with Ms. Gabala there was no one signed up as of 3 p.m. via email, and we have nobody here in person either. So moving on, we will start with communications and reports, and we will turn it over to our wonderful Dean Campus representative, Evan Kennedy, for his student report.
All right, everyone. We have a lot of repeats that we've had over the past couple weeks, but they're important dates, and there are a lot of dates I'm going to be throwing at you. So I will be happy to repeat them at the end if you'd like. First things first, on May 11th, our Seal of Biliteracy will be celebrated at UMass. We are very proud of our results this year, and it is important to celebrate the students who accomplished this amazing and vital goal. Next, as you will all see in front of you, you have a flyer. On May 18th, we'll be hosting our annual Dean Tech Car Show. Competing cars will roll in at 9 a.m. and will leave from 9 a.m. To 12 p.m., and the festivities will begin at 1 and end at 3, with trophies such as Best Honda, Best Toyota, Best Audio System, Best in the Show, Best Classic, and the rest of them are listed on your flyer. We currently have 2 food trucks for this event. We also have that flyer in front of you. I do have more flyers for the food trucks, the vendors. I do not currently have more car show flyers, but I will be happy to run upstairs and make some copies if you need me to. Next, on June 12th from 5:30 to 7:30 will be our annual Program Advisory Committee to celebrate and reflect on the school year 2023 through 2024. Next, we had a total of 37 students attend April Academy to strengthen their math skills. Students immersed themselves in mathematics and completed a project-based learning project with one of our cosmetology instructors. Students saw firsthand the interrelated role that math has in cosmetology and everyday life. That's a big, I'd say, complaint over students, as you know, that we don't often feel as though the curriculum relates to real life. So it was amazing that this was able to kind of reflect that to some of our students. And we have a few senior dates here. Prom will be held at Hitchcock Country Club on Thursday, May 23rd at 5:30. Senior Day will be on Thursday, May 23rd at 8:15. Senior breakfast and graduation rehearsal will be May 29th at 8 a.m. Senior trip will be on May 28th to Brownstone Water Park, and graduation will be on May 30th at 5:30 here in the gym. If there are any questions or you'd like me to repeat any dates, then I will be happy to.
Miss LaFave.
So is it set that it's going to be indoors rather than still open to whether it's going to be outdoor or indoor if weather not good?
Graduation? I'm gonna assume that it's gonna be indoor, but what I will do is I will email Ms. Caracciolo and Ms. Bermudez right now to get confirmation and send out an email to the committee after the meeting, or when I get an answer.
So, this is just a recommendation because I know it's happened in the previous years because of, the amount of people that go. Is there any way that we can have some like ice waters for individuals? I remember one time there was a family member who almost collapsed because of the heat, and then obviously we didn't have anything to provide to them, and you don't want warm water.
Yeah.
That's not going to help you, but like a hydration station that maybe. Well, some people might not bring bottles, but I mean, if we have something, even the small ones or something, so that way they can get, because sometimes it does get really hot in there, and we don't know what the temperature is going to be outside.
Yeah.
If it's like this, we don't have a problem.
Yeah,
We're
I agree. That last year it was very hot, and I will definitely add that in my email. I will draft an email to Ms. Caracciolo and Ms. Bermudez right now to get an answer for you, and I will send that to the committee after the meeting.
Ms. Tinsley Williams.
Mr. Kennedy, where is the trip?
The senior trip,
Yes, May 28th.
Brownstone Water Park. I don't know what city that's in. Connecticut.
Do they need any donations, you think?
I will ask and
Let me know.
let you know.
Email
I will
me.
definitely let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. And just for point of note, our Hoyoke North Campus representative is at a track meet tonight, so he couldn't be with us. All right, so moving right along. Vice Chair reports. I just wanted to make note that the MASC Day on the Hill is coming. It is May 6th from 9 to 2 p.m. It's $90 for you to participate. I have already registered, so if anybody else wants to go, we can certainly organize a carpool. If you can come, I would highly encourage it. It's a really important day. I attached to the agenda their talking points and priorities and goals, and also some like talking points for like how to talk to your legislatures to advocate for the things we want. I sat in on a really wonderful webinar last Friday. I tried so hard to find the slides on MASC's website, but could not because I'm just not good at technology. But I took some pictures of the slides. Basically, it was just, read if you can't make it. We encourage you to reach out to our local legislatures. Start with your state rep. Go on from there, go, to Senator Vilas, and even beyond there, and just advocating for the budget priorities in particular, which like I said, you guys have attached to the agenda. The main budget priorities are adjusting the Chapter 70 inflation index, fully funding the Student Opportunity Act and the Special Education Circuit Breaker, and establishing a minimum $100 per pupil increment as a base number for future years. So feel free to do more research. I'm happy to share more information. I'm sure Ms. LaFave knows a little bit more as well. But again, I encourage anybody who can to attend. And if not, like I said, reaching out to your legislatures in advance to help advocate for funding for public education. Ms. LaFave.
So I will add to that. So how it all starts off with Day on the Hill is first we meet at the UMass Club in Boston. And there we have speakers that come out. So our confirmed speakers is going to be, okay. Our confirmed
Perfect.
speakers is Rep. Denise Garlick and Steve Ultrino. They're the chair and the vice chair of the Joint Committee on Education. And also the interim commissioner, Russell Johnston. After that, then we go. So we already have appointments scheduled that our chair of the legislative committee for MASC does for us, because we've asked them to, and scheduled appointments. But there's other members who already schedule ahead of time. They're the times that they're going to be meeting with their state reps or the staff. Staff is just as important as meeting with the actual rep. And we go to the State House and we talk about our legislative priorities, but it's also good for them to hear about stories from the field. So it's your personal stories from within your community and how it, budgeting or certain things impact our students' education and well-being. But then the best part of it all is that students from across the Commonwealth, from the vocational technical programs, they come and they cook. And they bring specialty things that they've created. And it's just in that big hall where it's just mounds and mounds of food that the students have prepared for us, and actually for all the staff and reps in the Capitol. So.
Also, we eat together.
Oh yeah, it's you'll
Never
see.
been.
Yeah, it's great.
Going to
It's a great experience, but also it gets you into as I've always focused on. It's not just about local. Local, yes, you want to focus on local, but what changes local is your impact on state and then your impact on national, because that's where your funding is coming from. Especially in our city, the majority of our funding is state, federal. It's definitely not what's provided locally, our local contribution.
Thank you, Ms. LaFave. Dr. Rivera Colon?
And just a quick thing, it's $90 for anybody, but for students it's free.
Is that an excused absence as well? Mr. Soto? He said no. I'm just. Anybody else have any comments? Okay, great. Moving right along to new business. Back on MASC information. Ms. LaFave suggested that we start considering who we're going to select as delegates for this year's conference. There is not exact dates yet, but it will be the beginning of November, and it will be at the Cape again. So keeping in mind, if you're our delegate, it's your job to read ahead of time what you're going to be voting on and do the diligence there, and then attend the conference to vote as a representative for the body as a whole. Ms. LaFave.
So really quickly, we would need a delegate and then an alternate delegate in case the delegate cannot fulfill their duty. It is the role of the delegate to really look at the resolutions that have been passed forward by the resolutions committee that will be presented to the delegate assembly. It's also the duty of the board that they represent is to really look at it as well and decide, although I say that when you're making that decision, you're making it in the best interest as well for your community, right? But I do know that there's boards that they put it on the agenda, and the expectation is that whoever the delegate is going to vote according to how the committee has wanted it to be voted on. And then if there's any amendments, then obviously they'd get that direction from the full board, and then that delegate would then bring the amendments forward to the delegate assembly. The delegate assembly is the members that determine what we're going to be moving forward and really advocating for legislatively, and that impacts students across the Commonwealth. So that's your role.
So I know we usually nominate somebody, but I think if there's anybody who would like to be the delegate, to let them be known, and if not, then we'll go ahead and try to recommend someone. So again, is there anybody that wants to volunteer? Like anybody that wants to do it? Ellie, you want to do it? Okay. So Ms. Wilson can be our delegate. Granted, we'll vote on this in a second. And I think I'm seeing that Dr. Caballero wants to be the alternate.
Yes.
Now, keep in mind, you can still attend this conference, even if you're not the voting person, right? You can attend. You pick your sessions, you can attend as much stuff as you want. So keep that in mind, right? It's not just exclusive to that is gone. Okay, so I will entertain a motion then to move forward with committee member Wilson as our delegate to the delegate assembly, and committee member Dr. Caballero as the alternate delegate.
Motion.
I heard a motion from a voice. It was Mr. Collmore, right? Okay. I heard Mr. Collmore on the motion, and I see Mr. Willihan on the second. Because Josh is on Zoom, we will roll call. So roll call, Mayor Garcia.
Yes.
Miss Brunel is a yes. Miss LaFave.
Yes.
Miss Tensley Williams.
See.
Miss Dr. Rivera Colon.
See.
Dr. Caballero Roca.
See.
Mr. Willihan.
Yes.
Mr. Collmore.
Yes.
Miss Wilson.
We. I had to come up
Throwing
with
some
something.
French in the
There
mix
we go.
today. I
We're
love
going
it.
French now.
All right. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Next on new business is some policies are up for second review. So the policies are listed below. It's the CHC Development and Dissemination of Procedures. It's DBJ, Budget Transfer Authority. That's ironic. And DH, Bonded Employee and Officers. I will let Miss Wilson say anything if she feels needed, and then we'll go from there.
So I would be, I have not been notified that there was any public comment, or, anyone commented on this. So as the updated policies stand in place, the procedures policy is, again, that school committee creates policies and the superintendent in schools create procedures, and it's up to the superintendent or designee in order to, disseminate and share procedures that have been created. And the Budget Transfer Authority is just simply that we can transfer funds between cost centers, in case there is any need. And then bonded employees is just simply stating that the school district pays for the cost of the bond or any positions that need to be bonded.
A motion to approve second review. Are we sending this then to the receiver recommend to update whatever, even though there was nothing, it's just to kind of update that it was reviewed.
Yes. So since it's a second review, it now goes to the receiver. The receiver discusses it with the state. And then if approved, it goes forward and gets the policy gets updated. That's online. Our policy book, per se, that's online.
Okay. So the motion would be to send to receiver for approval. Adopt, sorry. To send to receiver for adopt. So the motion was made by Ms. LaFave, seconded by Ms. Tensley Williams. Any further discussion? Ms. LaFave?
Are we taking this as a package? Because then I would have to, so we're going to take it as a package, that all three. So the motion is to
Make that motion.
recommend
I
to
make
the
a mo-
receiver to adopt. So it would be CHC, DBJ, and DH.
Yes.
Yes. On discussion, Mr. Willihan.
Can I move the Budget Transfer Authority? Can I take that out and move that into the Finance Committee to be discussed briefly? Is it late?
It's not. But should it have been done at first review?
Yes.
You asking me?
I am.
Why?
Yes, Ms. Wilson.
So I would say that any policies that would like to be reviewed by any subcommittees should be done at the first reading, because now if the subcommittee wants to make a change, we will have to post it again for review. So going forward, if we're on a first review of any policy, I would ask that any subcommittees that wish to address it, or review it within the subcommittee, be done at first reading.
So keep in mind, Mr. Willihan, that doesn't mean it can't be done now if you feel like you need to, and then of course we'll just have to post it again.
It's just a minor language change. It's just a minor language update on that policy.
Thank you. Yeah, we've just been discussing this briefly, bantering back and forth, just the policy of budget transfers. So I'm not sure whether the committee where Mrs. Wilson's a member of anyways want to just weigh in on it on the subcommittee level for forward. That's my only thought.
Mr. Soto?
Yeah, I think this policy in general, Jay, is broad enough to allow flexibility because the key word in there is transfers between cost centers.
Yeah, that's my
Right.
key.
So I think a good discussion, this is my opinion, a good discussion to have in subcommittee is like, what are those cost centers, right? Because ultimately, like, I think that's we're going to land on school committee has to approve transfers between cost centers. But agreeing to what those cost centers are, like, you don't want to we have 3,500 accounts in the Holyoke Public School Department. Each school has a supply line, instructional materials, textbooks. Like, you don't want to approve at that level, but like, what are those cost centers that you want to approve at? I think that's going to be a great discussion that we have. But I feel like this policy is very broad enough to name that, yes, we'll approve. But I think more discussion has to be had around what those cost centers
What they
are.
Okay.
That would allow us to be involved in the process, but allow schools to, kind of
Autonomy.
go about their business.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Ms. LaFave?
I'm wondering if it's more prudent right now just to go ahead and vote for that way. It could be adopted and then anything specific as you guys had your meeting today, when you're looking to then make changes to where it's more specific to Holyoke and what you end up deciding then you can re-pull those specific policies and we can go through them again, and this way you put in the specifics to it. But for right now, moving forward with the minor changes, I think it's better to move there, and then any changes there afterwards, they can always be taken up again. So, I mean, I put in the motion. I don't know if somebody's going to end up amending it, but that's just my 2 cents.
Any further discussion? Okay, so seeing no amendments, the motion on the floor is to take up as a package CHC, DBJ, and DH for recommendation to the receiver for adoption. On the roll call, Mayor Garcia?
Yes.
Aaron Brunel is yes. Ms. LaFave?
Yes.
Ms. Tinsley Williams, sorry, Shayna's texting me.
See.
Ms. Rivera Colon?
Hey.
Dr. Caballero?
Yes.
Mr. Willihan?
Yes.
Mr. Collmore?
Yes.
And Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Okay, just to repeat so that our note taker got it, the motion was to take as a package CHC, DBJ, and DH for recommendation and adoption by the receiver. To refer to the receiver for adoption. And it was made by Ms. LaFave and seconded by Ms. Williams. Okay, she should have that. Okay, great. Thank you all. Moving on, ongoing business updates from subcommittee, policy and governance. I don't think you have anything, but go ahead.
So I will be scheduling a meeting in May at some point in some time. Because we do have more policies to review as well as minutes to approve in order to send forward to the full committee.
And also, the next local control meeting is subject on policy as well.
Correct.
All right, great. So, finance and operations, Mr. Will. Oh, I'm sorry,
That's okay.
Ms. LaFave.
I just have a quick question, and mind you, maybe we did talk about it. I'm now starting to write more here. Have we ever thought about a policy on AI?
So I think the first business is to review and update our current policies. I believe that AI would be a newer policy. Well, of course it would be a newer policy. But I think that we can, look into that. I have to be very honest with you that my focus is on current policies and updating them, and then moving forward to enriching our policies with ones that we feel we need.
Thank you. Mr. Willihan, finance and operations. Looking at
Thank you.
everybody, make sure I can move forward.
I reached out to Mr. Soto and our finance director. We agreed to have our next meeting on May 6th at 5:45 in the central office building. I have the minutes from our March 8th meeting done, so we'll hopefully approve or slash amend those at that meeting, and then bring those minutes to the full board.
Okay, thank you. Just keep in mind that's the Day on the Hill. So I don't know who your members are offhand, but just confirming if they're going to Day on the Hill or not.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Joint City Council School Committee, Ms. LaFave.
So I did send out communication over to Jeffrey Anderson Burgos, as well as co-chair Counselor Jourdain, just to figure out when we're going to have our minutes ready, so that this way we can also meet, because some of the recommendations from our meeting, let me just look at my email real quick that I sent. There were some recommendations. I haven't received a response back yet, but they wanted a follow-up on ESSER funding and spending, if you recall correctly, Superintendent Soto, as well as the panorama survey. I know you had discussed something about doing like a smaller one. Was it like a different type of survey or a follow-up survey that they wanted presented? Or were we using the one that you had presented to us? Already.
In that joint committee, I don't recall anything coming up about Panorama,
Oh, yeah, it did.
other than I know that we had a discussion about Holyoke High School's report card, and there was some discussion about a future presentation, but I think ultimately Mr. Counselor Jourdain said that the order was complied with, but I think I would have to also check my notes, Ms. LaFave, from that meeting.
I don't think I brought that agenda with me where I had written down, but I do remember they wanted a follow-up on the ESSER funding and spending. That was a definite. And then, yeah, they were looking at the report card, and then they were talking about the panorama survey. But like I said, I'm still waiting a response from either one, and to see when we're going to go ahead and have our next meeting. I heard you guys also talking about operations, and when you're looking at building improvement. So I think it is very important that we're having more frequent meetings as a joint school committee, city council. So I'll get back to you. Once I hear something, I'll get back to the vice chair, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you so much. Dr. Rivera Colon for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Subcommittee, and primarily going over the draft plan for the potential renaming, I should say, of Peck School.
So in our committee, we worked on, with the help of Mr. Soto and Aaron Linville, and their expertise on how to request feedback and include as many voices as possible. We together came up with a plan on renaming in order to include community voice, parents' voice, and everybody, especially those who are going to be in the building. In order to, and this has a two purpose. One being the renaming of the building, whether as part of our feedback is decided that it stays the same or it changes, but also it's an opportunity for us as the school committee to be out there in terms of that the community knows what we do and how we do things, and it's another opportunity for people to have a purpose to be involved with us, so to speak, and be able to learn more, and for us to have a presence in the community. This is something that is a short-term project, so to speak, but it allows the community to be involved and really see more about what we do. And I think that the timing could not be more perfect in terms of us preparing ourselves to get local control, to be able to have more opportunities to be in touch with the community. And this would be something that is a finite project that people can get behind.
Does anybody have any questions about the plan that she attached for our review?
Yes.
Miss Tinsley Williams.
You mentioned something about renaming. I think we need to study that first. I did some research on it, and my motto is never take a fence down until we know why it was put up. And I think we need to kind of look into that a little bit more before we change the name. Because I did do some research, and Mr. Peck, he was the first to let women work being pregnant. He also was for women getting paid the correct pay. So I think we really need to look into that a little more before we make a decision.
Thank you, Ms. Tinsley Williams. We did have our research done and was presented to the committee as well, and all of the wonderful things that Dr. Peck did. This is not necessarily taking away of anything that we know that was done, but it's another opportunity for having the community have a say in the name of a school, especially in a community where with our students, do not always feel represented with the names of the buildings in our city.
Mr. Willihan?
Thank you. I've been trying to follow this, the policy too on Zoom. Thank you for your efforts. Just going back to, we're sort of morphing into the mascots and the school colors. Do we want to have that part of this process? Could that be part 2 of the process down the road? I think, the school body should be involved with that too. They could do a survey or a contest, what's the best school mascot, and have make it a contest. We want to delve that far into this, the weeds, what's going to be next, so I would just, to me, my opinion is just not have the mascots and the colors part of this process. I would do that phase 2. Thank you.
Yeah, on the school building committee itself, when discussing mascots and colors, we kind of said the same thing as, once the school is established, letting the new leadership come in, maybe we have basic colors established, but then letting the new leadership kind of decide and vote as a school body on mascot and things like that. Mr. Collmore and then Ms. LaFave.
Yes, I have to agree with Mr. Wellman that our job in the committee was specifically for the naming of the school. And I think we ought to leave it that way. We as a school committee have a lot to say in this matter, but the colors and things like this, you got to leave it up to the parents, you got to leave it up to the principal, the superintendent, and let them have their discussion pertaining to all those other things. So I think Mr. Wallen is right. Let's leave it just for the naming of this school. But let's not rush into it, but get it done. Because time is really getting close with the construction of the building.
Yep. Ms. LaFave?
I remember when this was first talked about, they talked about whether it was going to be determined that this was going to be a new school, or was it going to just be like, okay, Peck came down because obviously it needed to be like redone. Has it been determined that it's like Peck was once here, Peck is gone? This is now something completely new. Yes, we're using the same area, but it's totally new.
Well, so I would say, as the representative for the school building committee, yes and no, because this process is to replace the Peck school structure. However, as a district, we've changed all our schools in the last year, right? So Sullivan is no longer Sullivan Elementary School, it's Sullivan Middle School. So the purposes of this school will be different than the purposes of this school would have been 2 or 3 years ago. So in theory, it is a new school, but in reality, it's not, right? Like everything we do within the school building committee is the rebuilding of the Peck School. So that being said, right now the name is Peck School, right? And the body needs to decide if they want to change the name and what that process would be. So I would just suggest that you just edit into this, maybe, you know, to Jay's recommendation. We'll edit the motion, but to remove the mascot and colors, but to also make sure that in the discussion is whether or not to keep the name, have a presentation about Peck himself, and let the people decide, you know, if that's the way we want to go. Mr. Willihan.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, you can kind of simplify it. I mean, they tore down the original Yankee Stadium circa 74, 73, 74. I'm not a Yankee fan. Okay, I want that in the record. But, you know, they tore down the original Yankee Stadium, the house that Ruth built, and they built, you know, the new Yankee Stadium. But it's still Yankee Stadium. I think they're on their third stadium now. Thank you.
Mr. Soto?
Yeah, I don't know if this adds value to the conversation, but I'm going to say it anyway. For accountability purposes, it will definitely be a new school, even if it retains the name Peck. So like, whenever a new school is built, the accountability process stays over, and you know, part of that process is, you know, kids have to be in that school for a couple years before you could actually collect certain metrics that the state collects on an annual basis. So for purposes of like, will this be a new school? Yes, it's going to be a new school, and we'll have to register it as a new school with the state, and then they'll start tracking data. They're not going to say, oh, this is like STEM and Metcalf combined, and when we do a comparison, like, nope, this is a brand new school, new start, new accountability data, new everything, even if the name is Peck.
Yeah, I was just going through our policy. I mean, it's so vague. I'm just saying. So I don't know if those are, again, it's going right back to the whole thing about really making it. It's going to have to be added into the policy, an amendment to the policy for updating, I think, before we take action any further. Because it almost sounds contradictory itself. It'll talk about a new facility, but then it says changing a name, and so it just.
So you're saying that the policy needs to be updated before we can enter the process?
No, I mean, you guys are looking at doing this in December. I mean, your policy, you can have it done beforehand. Okay, maybe not. That would.
Ideally by September is what Margaret would be pushing for, who's our operations manager. She wanted it done this spring, but obviously that didn't happen. So ideally. And then, of course, keeping in mind, I'm coming to you next, Ms. Wilson. Policy is next for the big topic at local control. And I know Ms. Wilson has suggested like reaching out to MASC for a deep policy review within the district. So that's something I think we'll be doing highly likely within the next school calendar year at least, right? So, you know, as long as we're falling within our policy guidelines now, which Dr. Rivera-Colon, I'm sure you ensured we were, then I think we're okay to move forward for now. And then obviously adopting policy forward, we would, you know, make sure. Ms. Wilson.
So I think we need to go back to some of the language that was used. And I think I saw rebuild. That term was used, a rebuild. It wasn't a new school, it's a rebuild. So in my mind, when I think of a rebuild, I think we are rebuilding that same school. So I would not be voting in favor of any name change based upon the language that was used to ourselves as well as to our community. And I remember greatly the consternation that was had when we took away the Dean campus.
That wasn't we.
No, I'm saying I'm talking about this. Okay, when the city, when the school district took away the Dean, identity, and while it's still a middle school, it's still functioning in the way it was originally built. We are not changing that. And so I just wanted to make those points.
I think establishing this process was to mainly avoid what happened with this campus. And get input, exactly. I was just checking to see if Mr. Garcia had his hand up because I know he's the one who wanted this to come through the committee and to have a process rather than just simply saying we're keeping Peck or not keeping Peck. I'll let Ms. Tinsley Williams comment and then Ms. Caballero, and then we're going to move on. Mr. Garcia, did you want to add anything to this conversation while we're on it?
I didn't have my hand up, but since I'm up on the topic here, I think the conversation you're having right now, and again, I say very little because I don't want anyone to ever think and feel that the mayor is trying to influence the process. So I appreciate the conversations people are having around this table. And so how you guys are hammering this out right now, where you are in the stage of trying to figure out what to do, I think it's very appropriate. And again, I'm just looking forward to actually execute some sort of process to engage the public so that we can start collecting that feedback and data that we need. So, we can get to a point where we can actually make a decision. But where we are right now, I think is very appropriate. Although, like Mr. Callamore alluded to, we want to watch out on the time here. We don't want to waste too much time before we start anything. But again, the conversation is really good, very appropriate. And I'm going to say as little as possible, just so that to make sure that the result is indeed a stakeholder conversation.
Ms. Tinsley Williams?
Mr. Peck was 25 years old when he became a superintendent. Tech schools was autonomous. So what he did, he brought it into the public. So it would be with the public school system.
Are you talking about Mr. Dean now or Mr. Peck? Because you just said tech schools.
Well, no, Mr. Peck, right.
Okay. Thank you. Dr. Caballero?
Yeah, listening to the conversations, that make me think about, well, yes, we need the public to voice their opinions. And then I thought, well, taking away the building and then the name, this is all thought process right now, right? It'll take away a lot of the identity and the history of so many people who just referenced that place as when I went to Peck. My dad went to Peck. I don't know how would that changing the name would affect emotionally, and in terms of legacy, in terms of history, and again, belonging, a place where there's nothing left, not even the name. So I'm just thinking and wanted to just point that out. Yeah.
I'll just point out, of course, the DEI subcommittee meetings were open to the public and open to all committee members. And I know that they worked on it over multiple meetings. So this process that's being recommended to us didn't come to us without thought. But that doesn't mean it can't be adjusted, of course. Mr. Kennedy?
Superintendent Soto, I actually just heard a lot about this week, but regardless of whether the name is changed or not, on paper, the test scores, all of that stuff from Peck Middle School, it'll be new, right? Like we'll be starting fresh.
Yes, everything will be fresh, and I appreciate all the dialogue, but I also want to add a perspective as well about people that might not have had a good experience at Peck, and people that might have a perception in the community about what Peck was, right? And the stories about Peck and all this stuff. So this is also an opportunity, and like the mayor, I don't want to say too much, but I also want to make sure that multiple perspectives are heard. This, part of the Dean name change was because of the reputation that Dean had at the time. And there was a desire, and I was not involved with that process, so I want to be clear. There was a desire to change the narrative and this is also an opportunity to change. This is a new start, new middle school, something different. So there could be a group of people that feel passionately about like wanting a name change, and there's gonna be a group of people that feel passionately about keeping it the same. But both voices are important, and I think I appreciate your work and making sure. I feel like everything that you've done has been about making sure we're including voices, especially of those that haven't been heard, because otherwise we're just going to hear from people that feel only one way and not worry about what other people feel. So
Thank you. Mr. Kennedy?
Yeah, I was actually going to make a point about that too. I don't think that if you were to vote on a name change for the school, that we'd necessarily be erasing the history that has been made there. We'd just be creating an opportunity for new history to be made. I don't think we're discrediting anything that Mr. Peck did for the community. He is still going down as a part of Holyoke's history, but also it's allowing someone else or another thing to be recognized in the city of Holyoke, and also creating, like what he said, creating new memories in that property, right? So yeah, that was my point.
I was going to say, I was just thinking that too, Mr. Soto. So keep in mind too, even ultimately, if the name of the building changes, we could name cafeterias, gyms, courts, all kinds of other things, libraries, media centers, other things after individuals too, if we so choose. Mr. Willihan?
Real quick, thank you. Yeah, to follow up on what Mr. Soto said, first we have to develop the policy. Okay, we're getting ahead of ourselves tonight. Okay, with making decisions. Okay, the policy is what we're vetting here. That's the first step.
Right.
All right, we haven't gone into the community yet. And we're already making decisions, and our minds are already set one way or the other. I don't think that's right. It has to go into the city. Look at different perspectives, as Mr. Soto said. That's what we're here for. To get their input. There might not be any right or wrong answer. Okay, there's no right or wrong answer. Okay, it's so moving forward, we can not eliminate Peck name. We can add a name to it. The Peck / Martin Luther King School. Pick a second name. Okay, so we don't have to eliminate anything. We can have the old and the new. That's something going forward. That's my suggestion. So you got to have two perspectives. Just again what Mr. Soto said. Just moving forward. Have a name for the next 50 years. Thank you.
So on the motion, because we've been kind of talking about this for a while, do you want to make a motion that we recommend what you've put forward, or does
Madam Vice Chair, I do believe that we have someone who's raised his hand quite
we
throughout
have
the
a
discussion.
few people that have raised their hands
Right,
repetitively.
right,
and
but
it's
you
my
said-
purview to move the discussion
I
forward.
understand
if
that,
I'd
but
like.
this individual has not been able to speak.
He has, actually. Right, Mr. Collmore, you've spoken on this, have you not? Everybody has spoken.
No, I have not.
I apologize sincerely. I'm 95% sure I thought you had. So please, Mr. Collmore.
Yeah, I agree with what you people are saying, but I think it's in committee, and this committee should, quickly as possible, have
He has spoken.
a public hearing. Let the public know this is very serious business we're doing for our city. So let's have the public know that they can come in here and discuss this with us and give us some suggestions, because at some of our committee meetings, we didn't have anyone come to even put in a word about any changes at all. So I think it's important that we just get this thing moving and get public input and say this is the way it's going to be, and then we vote from there. But don't lag on to this and lag on to this without letting the public have a say.
And just to point out, Mr. Collmore was the second person that spoke on this topic, so he did have a chance to speak. I just want to make the record clear. Ms. Tensley Williams?
I just have one more thing to say. We can't make decisions because someone had a personal problem at the school. My son had a rough time at Peck. So I could say, well, just change the name because he had a rough time at Peck, but it's not personal. It's everyone, like you said, need to be involved because we can't just pick a situation that someone had and then just scrap things.
And again, we're not trying to make the decision for ourselves. We want to engage the community moving forward. Dr. Rivera Colon has brought forward a draft plan. I will entertain any motions as people see fit. There are no motions. There's no motions on the floor.
So just to clarify, you want us to give like a motion to accept this plan and move it forward as a policy?
No.
No, just as a plan of how you're going to do the renaming.
In order to collect feedback to then present it to this body, so then the body actually votes on what the name would be, because that's what's in our purview.
Okay, so motion to accept the plan that DEI subcommittee
To collect feedback from
to collect
stakeholders.
feedback from stakeholders.
Second that.
I hope Shayna got that.
The motion on the floor made by Ms. LaFave is to accept the draft of the renaming plan presented to us by the DEI subcommittee. Ms. Tensley Williams seconded the motion. Mr. Collmore, did you want to make, or let me rephrase myself, any further discussion? No. All those in favor, I will take a roll call. Mr. Garcia.
Yes.
Ms. Brunel is a yes. Ms. LaFave.
Yes.
Ms. Tensley Williams.
See,
Ms. Rivera Colon. Sorry, Dr.
Yes.
Rivera Colon.
Yes.
Dr. Caballero.
Yes.
Dr. See what happens, you guys? I go on a tangent. Mr. Lillian.
Yes.
Mr. Collmore.
No.
And Miss Wilson.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Moving forward, Local Control Subcommittee. Dr. Rivera Colon.
So we had our most recent meeting, which was just an hour ago, a little bit more. It was on the topic of budget. We went over the points that were shared with us for the building capacity for the Holyoke School Committee. We got really positive feedback from Acting Commissioner Johnston. And we would be moving forward, putting together the draft of the plan, which is going to be shared with everybody on this committee. So that way, as we're moving forward, you will also have the opportunity to make suggestions and give feedback on the plan in order for us to continue our next steps moving forward to local control.
Thank you. Any questions? I just want to thank all the committee members that have been taking the time to attend these as well. I think the process is going really well, and I look forward to continuing it. Ongoing business, I see an out-of-state field trip for Sullivan Middle School as an FYI. If anybody, yes, Miss Wilson.
So I'm just wondering, when I look at these, I see some of the required lines are not filled in, such as where the cost is coming from, things of that sort. So I would ask in the future, either we update the forms that are used if it's not relevant, or we ensure that it's being completed.
Yeah, the first form is about getting school committee approval first, right? And in the like right now, the policy is that any out of state or overnight field trips must be approved first by the receiver and in local control of the school committee. There is a separate form that has all those details once that approval is granted. So it's really about getting the approval first before they go and do all the other work to finalize all of that stuff. So if you're saying that, like, in order to approve these trips, you want more details, then like we will train up the schools to make sure that they're doing that. But they don't want to go through the trouble of getting all these details and then not being able to go on the trip because it wasn't approved.
Right, but I'm just saying that if the lines that are on the form that are not being completed, if they're not relevant to us approving it or not, then we need to update that form
Okay.
rather than it looking like it's coming to us incomplete.
Okay.
That's my only suggestion.
Fair enough. All right, announcements. We have a few announcements here. Career Day at Kelly Schools coming up. CPAC and ESY summer. Thank you. End of school year, summer school options. Superhero Literacy Night at Ian White School. Middle School Building Committee meeting. Local Control Subcommittee. EL is English Language. I'm assuming
LPAC, yep.
English learners. I'm really bad. That's why I was still looking for an ELL pack, English language learners pack. District meeting coming up and a DPAC meeting coming up. Does anybody have any other announcements? Mr. Kennedy.
I was wondering if we could take a quick second to go back to communications and reports. I have an answer to Ms. LaFave and Ms. Tensley Williams.
You
question.
sure may, Mr. Kennedy.
All right. So, the dean graduation will be held inside in the gymnasium, and we will be doing our best to accommodate the families with bottled water. We did that for the class of 2022, and we hope to do it again this year, if possible. Miss Tensley Williams, the senior trip is covered, so donations. So we're not accepting donations at this time, but we appreciate your generous offer. Thank you.
All right, great. Seeing nothing else, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
Ms. LaFave on the motion, seconded by Ms.
Wait, wait.
Wilson. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. Once the motion's made, we can't entertain any other discussion, if I'm not mistaken, according to Robert's rules.
Aaron, I had my hands up before these motions were made, but I'm fine to reserve.
Hold on one second, please. I just wanted to make sure I could take it before I did. I apologize. I did not look to my right before taking that motion. So, Mr. Garcia, please.
Just that I want to invite the school board members and anybody that's watching from home. We are doing State of the City scheduled for May 9th. That is the day that I'll officially be presenting the budget to the city council, and then they have their hearings scheduled after that. May 9th, State of the City presentation, city council chambers at 6 o'clock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and apologies. All right, so on that motion to adjourn then, made by Ms. LaFave, it was seconded by Ms. Wilson. All those in favor, roll call. Mayor Garcia.
Yes.
Ms. Brunel is a yes. Ms. LaFave.
Yes.
Ms. Tensley Williams.
See.
Dr. Rivera Colon.
Yes.
Dr. Caballero Roca.
See?
Mr. Willihan.
Yes.
Mr. Collmore.
Yes.
And Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
All right, meeting is officially adjourned at 7:01 p.m. Tuesday, April 23rd. Thank y'all.